Welcome to 108 Contemporary, a nonprofit arts organization that specializes in fine craft. This craft kit is inspired by the innovative, thoughtful fiber works of artist Shin-Hee Chin. Every piece in this exhibition, Entangled Harmony, is made entirely by hand by the artist. Using a technique that she created, Shin-Hee Chin uses recycled quilts as her canvas and thread instead of paint. We're going to explore this technique in miniature and, hopefully, gain a better understanding of how and why she created her incredible works. Follow along. In your craft kit, you'll find instructions, which are double-sided. One of these two sizes of needlepoint canvas could be either your yarn needle and two different colors of yarn. You'll also need a pair of scissors. I am going to use my thread snips because I really like them, but you could use regular scissors if that's what you have. Doesn't really matter. And to get started, let's first take a look at some inspiration. While Shin-Hee Chin's inspiration for her pieces comes from many places, including poetry, nature, and even meditations on the complexity of human nature, one of her biggest inspirations comes from music, especially classical music from the Romantic and the Impressionist periods. Her work is impressionistic. Up close, it might not look like more than jumbled stitches, and far away is a much clearer picture. She also talks about how her work is guided by her intuition. Intuitive stitching, meaning she doesn't know whether the needle is leading her fingers or her fingers are leading the needle. In other words, regardless of what she had originally planned to do, the end result of Shin-Hee Chin's work is based on vibes. Some of her pieces are representational, meaning that there's something that you've probably seen before, such as Poisson d'Or, based on the song by the same name of Claude Debussy's, or Ode to Joy, which is the title of the poem Ludwig van Beethoven used in the last movement of his Ninth Symphony, one of his most famous works. Summer Pastoral, inspired by Beethoven's Sixth Symphony, would also fall under representational work, as would these four pieces, part of the Embracing Void collection, which is inspired by Chopin's Four Ballades. Shin-Hee Chin also used music to guide much of her abstract work, such as this 12-panel piece, Papillon, which means butterfly in French, and is based on a 12-song piano suite by Robert Schumann of the same name. While the composer used his music to represent the story of two brothers of different temperaments who are in love with the same woman, the artist used colors, textures, and round organic shapes to represent concepts like forceful temperaments, angelic love, poetic souls, and even truth. The spiritual Swing Low, Sweet Chariot was written by a formerly enslaved man in pre-statehood Oklahoma. Shin-Hee Chin used this song, its lyrics, its composer, and even the very land where this man lived as the inspiration for her piece. What do you see in this piece that might represent some of those elements? To start stitching, you'll need your canvas, one of your yarn bundles, your needle, and your scissors. When we needlepoint, we're going to use short lengths of yarn because as we pull it through the canvas, it's going to become more frayed and get a little tangled. And in order for the thread to look consistent, then I'm just going to work in shorter lengths. So I'm going to be tying on and cutting off and tying on and cutting off. So if you want to start by cutting all of your thread into lengths, I would say no longer than from your fingertips to your shoulder at the most. That might even be a little long for some. So for me, it comes out to about this long. I'm going to snip it off, and now I can get started. To thread your needle, you can either just push the yarn through, or if it's starting to fray like mine is here, then you can fold your yarn over the needle and pinch, slide your needle out from under that pinched section, and then thread it through the eye. For some reason, that's a little easier. All right, leave that end loose and tie a knot in the other end. This is what we call a wasting knot. And it actually makes it really easy to get started with needlepoint. Now, we're not doing traditional needlepoint, which is typically very smooth, very even. We're doing Shin-Hee Chin inspired intuitive stitching. So we're going to end up layering and crossing over our own stitches, and it's going to have a lot of texture. To start, bring your needle through your canvas. You may have to push a little bit with your thumb like I did, and pull all the way through until your yarn rests on top of your canvas. So this is going to be our front. We're going to leave that right there, and then I'm going to bring my needle up in line with this knot, either this way horizontally or this way vertically. I just need maybe 1, 2, 3, 4. That's enough. Kind of up 4 squares away. And from here, I have 2 choices. The first choice is to just start stitching around, and then as this gets covered up, the tail will be secure. Or if I want to make sure it's secure right from the start, I can do this, which is to put my needle down, back in the direction of the wasting knot, then come up on the other side of the tail here. But still, I'm keeping my stitches very close, just 1 square apart. And I'm going down, 1 over, oops, and up 1, making sure that my tail is still between this working yarn, and 1 more time. And now this is secure, so I can grab my scissors and cut the wasting knot off. Boom, this is going nowhere. Then I can just get started stitching. Yeehaw! To practice intuitive stitching, I'm going to think about how Shin-Hee Chin uses landscapes in her work and a lot of buildup of textures and layers, and whether the stitch is long or short just kind of depends on how it fills the space she needs it to fill, and how she uses music to inspire her work. It's October right now. The exhibition lasts through November, right when the leaves are changing and the weather is changing. And for me, I think that's a bittersweet time because I don't like cold weather, but I also don't want it to be boiling hot. So we're in that sweet spot where we know this beautiful weather is not going to last all that long because 108 Contemporary is in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Weather changes all the time. And so I am going to listen to some music that's a little bit melancholy, but I also will show you my work in progress. So as you can see here, I've built up some layers. I'm using a tree, not a whole tree, but just part of a tree as a way to fill my canvas. And since I had these 2 colors, what better for October and November than a little tree with some changing leaves. So I am going to start filling in more and more of this piece. And here are a couple of tips for working on a needlepoint canvas, and especially with yarn. So for one, this orange yarn seems to fray pretty easily. So I really am just working in a short length. This is not very long. And I'm putting in my wasting knot, but I'm not going to do that kind of short stitches over the tail. I'm just going to work in this area until I've mostly run out of yarn, and I'm going to think about making sure that I've already covered up this tail before I cut anything off. Also, when coming up in the middle of, let's say that my first stitch is in this square right here, there's already, or no, let's go to this one, because there's already yarn in it. There's already yarn in this square. When I'm coming up through it, I want to try to make sure that I don't pierce the yarn itself, which would mean going through the middle of it like this. Because if I make a mistake and I want to take my needle off and undo my yarn, it makes it really difficult to pull it out when it's split between the thread. The fibers of the yarn just kind of hold on to itself. And so I'm trying to make sure that even when I'm working in an area with a lot of yarn in it, that I am coming up on one side or the other of the yarn that I'm working around. And now I think I'm ready to get started. I'm going to turn on my music and get to stitching, and I'll meet you up as we finish our projects. Here we go.
Well, I'm pretty pleased with it. This took me about an hour, and if I wanted to fill in with, let's say I had another color of yarn, I could do that, finding something in my yarn stash, or I could also take my scissors, and if I wanted to kind of use this as an applique, carefully cut out the outline of this shape and then add it to something else. But I think I'm going to leave it as is. Here are a couple of other examples that I did with our variegated yarn. Some kits have variegated yarn, which means it changes colors as the yarn goes on. There are also some striped yarns, and they can all have different effects. I was thinking more about Shin-Hee Chin's abstract work with these ones, thinking about her use of circles, especially in weaving her yarn as well as stitching it, and also the way that she will lay a foundation of one color and then come in with a few different colors and almost pull the thread back as she stitches to give kind of a peekaboo moment. So that's what I was thinking about here. And I'd love to see
your results of your slow, intuitive stitching craft kit. Tag us at 108 Contemporary, and until next time, happy crafting!